Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to Cybersecurity 101. My name is Karen Asbra. I'm a Senior Vice President and the Director of Operations for Rappaport Reiches Capital Management. Rappaport Reiches is an independent investment advisory firm located in Skokie, Illinois. We manage approximately $600 million for individuals, families, and nonprofit organizations. We were the recipient of Charles Schwab's 2019 Operational Excellence Award, in large part because of our comprehensive cybersecurity practices for safeguarding our clients' assets. And I am joined here tonight by my longtime friend and colleague, Adam Mosley. Adam is the Managing Director of Technology for Charles Schwab and has deep interest and expertise in the cybersecurity arena. Thank you, Adam, for joining us.
Thank you, Karen.
And I'd also like to extend a big thank you to FJMC as well as the TBI Brotherhood. We are so thrilled to be in front of you tonight and so pleased that we're able to share this content. And also a big shout out to Norwin Marins, without whom none of this would have been possible. Thank you so much, Norwin. Now just a bit of housekeeping. There are two ways you can view us today. In the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you may see some dots that you can click on to switch between gallery and speaker view. We recommend that you watch us in gallery view tonight so you can see us at the same time. We'd like this to be as conversational as possible, so we invite you to please enter questions in the Q&A box as we're talking, and we will get to as many of them as we can. If we do not get to your question, we will be happy to answer it afterwards or in a follow-up email. Our goal here tonight is for you to leave with additional awareness and tools to protect yourself in the cyber arena. We are increasingly vulnerable these days to cyber fraud as we have many of us transitioned to working out of our homes. And we would like to give you some of the common threats that you can be on the lookout for. But to kick things off tonight, we would like to do a poll. And the question is, what are you worth? And more specifically, what is your social security number worth on the dark web? So we're going to give you a minute to answer. Do you think it's $1? Do you think it's $10? Do you think it's $100? Or do you think it's $1,000? So we'll give you just a couple of minutes here to vote. Okay, we have almost everybody in. We'll give you another 5 seconds. All right, we have almost everybody, so I'm going to share the results with you. So the vast majority of you, 60%, think your social security number is worth $1,000, 21% $100, 14, 10, and 5% $1. Well, congratulations to the 5% of you who guessed $1. Counterintuitive though it may be, your social security number is actually worth very little on the dark web. And so fraudsters are playing a numbers game to try and acquire as much private information as they can to sell in bulk. So with that scary thought in mind, kick things off here by asking Adam a question. We are at home, all of us, these days. A lot of us are doing our jobs out of our home, and even those of us who may not be working professionally are involved in organizations that require a lot of email communication back and forth. Often we have to share data, with each other. How should we be thinking about email these days, and which we should and shouldn't be including?
Karen, thanks, and thank you very much to everyone on the line with us today. And before I answer the question on email, which I think is a perfect place to start, Karen, maybe I just want to double down on something that you said when you opened us up, and that is, I hope that everyone leaves here tonight not scared, not overwhelmed, but maybe just a bit more informed, and also armed with just a couple things that we can all do to make our cybersecurity profiles just a little bit stronger. Cybersecurity does not need to be the overwhelming thing that so many people think it is. In reality, there's some really good basic hygiene that once put in place can do just an extraordinary job at protecting everyone. So with that in mind, I also too want to encourage the group to ask questions tonight. We do have some good material that Karen and I have prepared in advance, and we're happy to talk about that tonight. But the event is even more fun and even more personal to all of you if you're able to ask those questions. So use the Q&A feature, get those questions to us, and we're going to do our very best to answer each and every one of those as best as we can. So email. It's always a fun place to start. Email sounds so simple, so basic. You should know the organization that I work for, which is in the financial services space, is one that works very closely with Karen and other advisory firms just like hers across the country. And the team that I lead within that organization has a pretty intense focus on cybersecurity. So very often we're talking with registered investment advisors about these matters, and we're always very sensitive with email. In fact, very often, and Karen knows this, I talk about email as if it's cyber public enemy number one, or maybe the greatest cybersecurity threat that exists to all of us today. So it's not our computers getting hacked, although that happens. It's actually probably more so our email accounts, getting hacked. And by that, I mean the web-based email that we all use. The sensitivity around email and the reason we put the focus on it, the reason I talk about it in terms of cyber public enemy number one, is that nearly every incident we see, it tracks back to email, an email that someone received in their inbox, and maybe they were tricked into clicking on the link or opening an attachment. And these are all things that every single one of us do really quickly and without thinking about it. And the key takeaway and message here is that the fraudsters, and that's what we call the bad guys that live on the dark web, as Karen mentioned, they know this. And for fraudsters to get our attention, they have the ability to send out email to tremendously large groups of individuals at once. And those who click on links or open attachments or maybe respond to requests for sensitive information, those emails that are fraudulent, it exposes us to tremendous risk. In fact, one of the more common incidents that we see in our organization is that a user, and this is a good takeaway for everyone on the line, if you receive an email from your email provider and it says that your account has been locked or is at risk of being locked, and you're given a link to click on that and then to go into your email account, be very cautious with that. In fact, I would suggest that you delete that email. And if you are worried, go on out to your web-based email account and log in, but don't click a link to get there, because very often what we might see is that link will take you to a website that looks just like Microsoft Office 365 or whatever email platform you use. And they'll have a space there for you to enter in your user ID and password, except that website is not Microsoft's. It's a fraudulent website. And when you key in your user ID and password, you're often, if it's malicious, of course, in nature, you are giving your user ID and password over to the bad guys. And they use that. They use that to log in. They use that to pretend to be you. They use that to sit inside of your email account and watch everything that you're doing. And they will also use that to communicate with your friends and your loved ones and try to trick them into doing things for them on your behalf. So that's why we should be so cautious around email and so careful, and be particularly mindful of clicking on links and opening attachments. And one link that I always like to talk about is the little tiny one at the bottom of those emails that says unsubscribe. And we've all used this from time to time, and Karen knows this. It's best not to click that link. The fraudsters out there have been known to use that very mechanism as a way to send you out to another website where you'll be asked to give up more sensitive information, or you simply identify yourself as a bona fide and high value target. So rather than even clicking that link, the very best thing you could do with your junk email and we all know we get more junk email than we do legitimate email. Don't click the unsubscribe link, just drag it into your junk email box or your spam email box. And all of your email systems are going to be smart enough to know that if they receive, or if you rather receive a email from that sender or that looks and feels like that email, it'll automatically move it into your junk items. And you can look at that once or twice a week. And usually without exception, I'll be deleting everything that's in my junk items. So those are some things to think about with respect to email and why there is such the sensitivity around it, Karen.
Yeah, no, that's great, Adam. And as you mentioned, it comes with an emotional appeal. Usually your account has been locked, and especially, as we navigate this pandemic, fraudsters are well aware that we are anxious, and, they will include things in the emails I've seen, such as, we would like your bank account information for your stimulus payment, or, we'd like you to pre-register at your local hospital. And, they are hoping that they can, prey upon our anxiety to get a response out of us. And so our motto is always, keep calm and don't click.
That's right.
So those are some of the things to be aware of. In terms of email, I've heard you describe it before more as a postcard than as, a letter that's sealed and only intended for a recipient. I know some people, on this call may be needing to share documents back and forth. With our clients, we are always using a secure file share system, and I know Schwab does as well. How should we think about what kind of information we can be including in an email?
It's a good analogy, and it's one that tends to be pretty effective. And you're right. So we talk about email as if it's a postcard, and not to put anything in an email that you wouldn't be comfortable with everyone seeing along the way. That's those that could be looking over your shoulders. You're typing up that email, or as that tiny message traverses the internet and makes its way to the recipient, or as it sits inside of that recipient's inbox. You wouldn't put your social security number or account numbers or things like that on a postcard, because that's dangerous. And a lot of people have the ability to see it. Well, the same is true of email. Those that are savvy and know how to prey upon individuals like all of us on the line today can very easily intercept emails or can make their way into our online email accounts. And that's why it's very important not to use email as a secure communication tool, because it's really not secure at all. So that's where these portals come in. So the professionals that here everyone on the line works with, whether it's an advisor, like your firm, Karen, or whether it's an attorney, whether it's a certified public accountant, what all of these organizations have in common is they have secure methods of communication by ways of portals. And the beauty of using those tools is that the communications they're deeply encrypted. There are controls put in place that will delete that information once it's been idle for some time. You can also layer other security measures on top of that to just make the communication much more secure.
So rather than attaching, a report with a password on it even, you would recommend that everybody use a file share. Yeah.
I would, and the way to think about password protecting a document, which by the way is better than nothing. I'll take that over nothing any day.
As long as you don't keep the passwords on your desk, right?
Well, that's right. Or unless, as my own accountant did one year, sent me my tax return, and he said, hey, your password, because he password protected it. He said, hey, your password is your last four, meaning my last four digits of my social. Trust that the last four digits of my social can be found somewhere out there on the internet. It's probably all but public information at this point.
For pretty cheap.
But the way, yeah, that's right. Remarkably cheap, right? As we know, so the way to think about the communication, of that information is that it's just best to use the portal for that. Again, the password protection, better than nothing. However, if a fraudster has the technical know-how, savvy capabilities and whatnot to hijack your email account, well, trust that they're going to have a tool on their shelf that they can take to eventually crack a password, in a document that they have, an endless amount of time to sit on top of and try to work on.
Yeah, and we're getting some great questions coming in.
Good.
First follow up, is there, a file share service that you would recommend just for individuals, maybe doing some community involvement work that don't have access to the whole infrastructure that you and I do?
Yeah, I do. So for those that are, maybe I'll address it two ways. So for those that are, looking for a professional solution, increasingly we see platforms like ShareFile, which is a really good one. And, it too could be used by individual users, but most often this is one we see used by advisors, CPAs, attorneys, and so on. But for us at an individual level, it's actually increasingly easy to find solutions out there that are really good for secure document sharing. Dropbox is really, really good. And they've got a lot of great security controls that you can enable on that platform. I'm sure many on the line use Apple products. So Apple has an online sharing platform, and it's called iCloud. And there are some really great capabilities, Dropbox-like, that have been added, to that as well. And there are many other types of solutions out there. Typically what we recommend, when we're suggesting that someone go check one of these out, pull up your iPhone, pull up your Android device, go on out to the various app stores, type something in and take a look at some of the reviews and look for ones that, I always say, look for something that is wildly popular. So you're looking for ones that have just great ratings, a lot, and also widely adopted. So a number of users, in the hundreds of thousands or millions is great. And you stick to name brands. And it's also, maybe the last thing I'll add, you want to pay for this service, right? You don't want to just go grab something for free. You want a company that's going to be around for a while, that's investing in their security protocols and whatnot. So, don't be afraid to pay a few dollars a month or whatever for the app, to get a good file sharing application. But those are some good ones that I might suggest you consider.
Yeah, we had a specific question about Google Drive. Have you used that at all? I mean, I know I have, yeah.
Why don't you take that one if you've used that?
Yeah, no, I really like Google Drive. I find it's, very convenient for, sharing even with family and friends, for sharing basic spreadsheets. I would say, that's a great, it's free, but it's as you said, it's a name brand and it's tried and tested. Yep. So.
Yeah, and totally agree. And, I would call out Google Drive as the iCloud equivalent.
Right.
What is on Apple's platform.
Yeah, Adam's
no issues with that at all.
You're an Apple, I'm an Android, right? So, but we're still friends. Yeah. So we want to take this from emails to text. We're getting several questions about texting. You taught me the very fancy term smishing. So when it's a fraudster tries to get access to your email, we call it phishing. When they try to send you something via text, we call it smishing. And there is a lot of that going around. So what would you say about text? Any more or less secure than email?
You want to be as careful with text messages as you do with email. One thing I didn't say on email is that, very often we'll say, if you can, treat your email as if it's guilty until you prove that it's innocent. And that just means don't assume that it's legitimate. Don't let that be your first, assumption or response. Look at it and be a little suspect. And even if you are just a little suspect, that might give you just enough time to take a step back, get a read of the situation and let your instinct kick in, as I say sometimes, and keep you from getting hurt. Text messaging is really no different. So I'm glad you mentioned smishing. That is in effect when someone will send you a link in a text message. Sometimes it'll be a text message that they're simply looking for you to respond with sensitive information. Whatever the case, it's not legitimate. And you want to be as careful with those, as you are on email. So there too, don't click on a link, because what those links might do is simply launch you out to a website that's malicious in nature. And then that's where, identity theft and, other things like that could happen. So, and by the way, with respect to COVID and what we're seeing right now, pretty consistently, by way of both email phishing and text-based phishing or smishing, we've seen text messages come across from financial services firms that were not legitimate. We've seen them come from the CDC. We've seen links out to pandemic heat maps. There was one that I saw from a colleague that looked like it came from the World Health Organization. All of these were fraudulent in nature. All of them were examples of smishing. And trust that if a organization like that is wanting to get in touch with you, they're not going to send you a text message or something like that. It's going to be through some other means. So,
or even a voicemail,
yeah, be careful.
right? I mean, we can take it, to the next level, and they'll leave you messages, saying your social security, is in danger. And as you've, said before, trust that they will call back if that is real, and that they're not going to try to contact you, through a text message or a voicemail even.
Yeah, a common question we get is, am I at risk if I open that email? No, you're not. It's if you take action and click on that link. So if you open it, you're fine. Delete it, you're fine, or move it into your junk item. Same thing with a text message. And if you receive a phone call, an automated phone call from the IRS, just hang up. It's I'm 99% sure that it's fraudulent or illegitimate in nature. And as I've said before, they'll call back if it's important.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to follow up on that, we have a question of, how can you tell if the email is real? And, I've heard you describe before how it used to be very obvious when you would get a fraudulent email, dear sir, dear madam, with very strange language.
Yeah.
And no longer. We are seeing fraudsters get very savvy at speaking in, day-to-day parlance and intercepting conversations in the middle. And, you'll be having a legitimate email chain going back and forth, and they'll pick their moment and insert themselves. So, how can we tell if something is real?
I'd love to say you could, Karen. I don't know that you can.
And I know you always encourage us to go out to the website, right? And
that's right. Yeah, I think that's the best thing you could do. I mean, sure, you could go into the settings of the email. You could take a look at the address that it's from. But I'll tell you, the fraudsters are so good and they're so savvy. And yes, they used to be very easy to spot. You could see them a mile away. We would laugh at them, when we saw these fraudulent messages come across. But now, I saw one that looked like it was sent from the organization that I work for. I had an advisor showed it to me, and it looked perfect. It was copyrighted. They had a compliance number on it. It had our logo on there, and the whole thing was fraudulent in nature. So it's very, very difficult to tell. You're right. The best thing you can do, pick up the phone, call that person, call that organization. That's how you can tell. Hey, I've got an email here, right? Is that legitimate? Or go to the website, and take action that way.
Yeah. Don't download attachments. Don't click on links. Pick up the phone, give them a call, or go to their website, directly. Question about, is it possible to block these text messages?
It is possible, actually, but it'll be it's something that actually will never stop. But yes, you can do this, I believe, on email. You can do it on text messages. I think you can do it on phone calls too. So this will be a setting within your handheld smartphone, and you can block a sender is what you can do. So I could pull up my iPhone and talk you through it, but that would probably only address half the audience. But yeah, so what I would do a quick search, online, and look for how to block a sender is what you want to do. But it's remarkably easy, and you might even be able to swipe on some of these devices and block a sender that way too. But yes, that's a great way to do it. But they'll change. I remember this was just a few weeks ago. In just a single day, I got probably 4 different calls from Apple that they were all fraudulent, and every one of the phone numbers was different, and they were showing as if they were coming in from different states. So a true story. So I'd have to block that every single time. It's kind of a never-ending thing, but that's how you do it. Yeah. So you just got to be diligent, about it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So moving on of email and text messaging, we're now getting some questions regarding security of Wi-Fi,
Sure.
of networks, of Zoom. um,
Good.
yeah. So, you know, especially now that we're working out of our homes, you know, I know that we're actually more vulnerable in some ways than when we're at the office. And
Sure.
particularly if we're, you know, working in any kind of a public space, you know, a Starbucks, a hotel, an airport, you know, we never use public Wi-Fi. You know, that's just the same as Adam described with the postcard. You know, somebody can get into that network and be reading everything that you're doing on it. So you always want to make sure it's a secured Wi-Fi connection. Specific question also came in: should the owner of a home or business network broadcast the SSID of their modem or router? You want to take
Oh,
that?
very nice. I love that. I love
Yeah,
that
you can tell we
question.
have some sophisticated viewers tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm impressed. Most advisors I work with, Karen, don't know what an SSID is. It's the name of your network is what the SSID is. Should you broadcast it? I broadcast mine, but I'm really good with my password too, and I'm careful with that. I also, you know, have enabled other security protocols on my router to account for that. I'd say it's a judgment call for all of time. I've broadcast my SSID. So I don't have an issue with that. But here's some of the really important considerations. When I received that router, and this one was from my cable company, the very first thing I did was I changed the name of the network. So it came in with some generic name from Xfinity or Comcast and whatever. So I immediately changed the name. I customized it. And I followed up and I changed the password. In some of these devices, not all, but in some of these devices, they all have the same network name and password, which makes it really easy for someone to get in, you know, if they want to. So that's the first thing you want to do is change those. And then, yeah, I think that's good. Here's one thing for the home users that you might want to think about. Most routers these days, they come with both your primary network and then a guest network. You know, I would suggest you flip on that guest network, and if you have folks that come over that want to use your Wi-Fi as they're spending time with your family, you know, have them get on the guest network, and then you don't have to have them on your primary network, and you don't have to share your password with them.
Yeah, yeah, and passwords. What a great segue for us. You know, we know that there are various ways to protect yourself, and you know, passwords are right up there at the top in terms of complexity, in terms of keeping them unique. You know, we are all guilty of using the same password we do, you know, from one website to the next. But even more than that, you know, we found that the best solution is really to use a password manager, because you want to keep changing these passwords frequently. It's too hard to try and remember 100 different passwords and keep them all unique and keep them all long. So, you know, we've really embraced the password manager. Do you have any, you know, recommendations for our folks on, you know, where to start with that?
I do. And if I may, let me just provide a little bit of context on those two really important parameters. You know, so the reason you want your password long, really simple, short passwords are easy to crack, and they're, you know, the fraudsters, you know, the cyber criminals, they have access to tools that, you know, can take a, you know, let's call a 6 to 8 character password, and they can probably crack that by brute force in a number of minutes. The technology is that good to do that. But once you take that same password and you push it out to 10 or 12 or even best 15 characters, it can take that cyber criminal using that same technology literally decades now to brute force crack that password. So length is incredibly important on that. Now, to remember a 15 character password is actually quite difficult. So what do you do about that? I want you to think not passwords, but think passphrases. Take a collection of words that are meaningful to you, easy for you to remember, but very difficult for others to guess. Bring them together, take the spaces out, and you've got a 15, 16 character passphrase that's, again, easy for you to remember, and it will be difficult for anyone else to guess on there. And then you mentioned unique. Now this is a really, really important one that I want to really drive home to everyone on the line today. This one's incredibly important. I want you to think primarily about your sensitive accounts, any financial institution you work with, your email provider, any online document storage that you're using, bank, credit card, mortgage, all of that. These are incredibly sensitive accounts. You want to be careful not to reuse your password on any of those. Those should be unique across all of those. And the reason for that, and I'm going to give you an example. Many on the line are probably familiar with the massive data breaches that happened at companies like LinkedIn, Yahoo, Comcast, Anthem. I could go on and on.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. The motherlode, right, of all data incidents and breaches. Amongst the data that was harvested and exfiltrated from many of these organizations, it included user IDs and passwords. Now, what's interesting about that, it's not so that the fraudsters could break into our LinkedIn accounts and play around in there. Not at all. It's because they know that users reuse their user IDs and passwords. And very often our user ID is our email address, and there's nothing we can do about that anyway. So we reuse our passwords because it's easier to do that. So the cyber criminals, they have access to a type of technology that allows them to plug that in, and within a matter of minutes, they can try that user ID and password across hundreds of different websites, different domains, including banks, credit cards, mortgage companies, brokerage, online email, and everything else. And very often they'll get in, and then that's where they start inflicting the real damage and pretending to be you, or actually stealing out your identity and whatnot, and trying to affect transactions on your behalf. So that's where the unique password is incredibly important. So now that our passwords are long, now that they're unique, they're longer, we have more of them. What do we do? How do we manage these? And most of us are storing them in some sort of spreadsheet, and we've been doing that for all of time. And that's not bad, so long as that too is password protected. But one of the best things you can do, as Karen mentioned, is to get a password manager. And there's many of these that are available. I am going to give you my top 3 that I think you should think about tonight. But what these tools are great at doing is databasing all of your passwords. And I think I'm up to, I don't use them all, of course, but I'm probably got 140 something different user IDs and passwords, that are in my password manager. They're good at databasing this information and making it easy to get to. They're good at securing the information on your mobile devices and making them available on the rest of the mobile devices and computers you might use. They're also good at creating complex passwords. You can actually plug in the parameters of how you want new passwords created. They're just great tools for that. So we do recommend those. This too is another piece of technology that you want to pay for. You don't want to get for free, so be careful about that. And some of the top names out there, again, that are widely adopted and wildly popular include LastPass is a great one. Dashlane is another. And the one I've been using for some time is the number 1, and then Password. And then increasingly, I've been using some technology right within iCloud Keychain, which I think works really, really well also. So those are some good ones to be thinking about.
Yeah. And we're getting some very good questions about multi-factor or two-factor authentication. And just to make sure everybody's aware, in addition to having these long, complex passwords for your financial websites, you can also generally enable what's called two-factor authentication, which will send you a text message in order to get a code and to log in. It's just another safeguard against a fraudster. Even if they get your username and password, they generally are not in possession of your cell phone in order to receive that text message and get that code. And so the question here is, can two-factor authentication be hacked, Adam?
Anything can be hacked. That's the fact of the matter. I think we've probably seen instances where two-factor itself was compromised, but it's incredibly unique when that happens. And let's just say a lot of stars need to align just perfectly for that to happen. It's still the very best thing you can do.
Even fingerprint technology, right? Is
sure.
Another way to do.
Yeah, I mean,
somebody's bringing up, is that safe to use? I mean, I think about as safe as you're going to get. but.
It is. Yeah, I think, any sort of biometric, whether it is through a fingerprint, whether it's through Face ID, which most of our phones are doing, these days, or, whether it's your voice, that's actually one of the things that we're doing within our own company right now is the voice can help be the password or the fingerprint, if you will. Yeah, as it relates to multi-factor, the guidance here is use it everywhere it's made available. Your email providers make it available today. Any financial institution is going to be offering that today, and you want to turn it on. And it's very easy to do. You just go into the security settings of, you name that provider, and it's usually a checkbox. And then the multi-factor is it may look at the computer that you're logging in from and ensure that you've actually logged in from that computer before, or it might send you a text message, to your iPhone and give you a code, or your Android device, of course, and give you a code that you type in, each time, or it might be an app that you're running that you pull the code, from that. All of these are different examples of two-factor or multi-factor authentication, and you want to use it because in the event your user ID and password is compromised, it's this and only this that's going to keep the cyber criminals out of your online account. So you have to use it. And the instances I think of it being cracked are extremely rare. I can think of one.
Adam, a couple people have asked, could you just repeat your password manager recommendations? Sure. And, in conjunction with that, how about using the browser to save the passwords? Yeah.
Love it. Yeah, I love it. So, all right. So the three that I mentioned were LastPass, -lane, and then 1Password. That's the number 1, and then password. And the one thing I added on there at the end, Karen, was that I've been increasingly using iCloud keychain. So I really appreciate the question from the user about saving them to the browser, because that's actually exactly what I'm referring to there in that. So I want to address this one really carefully because I think it's okay to save them to the browser. I do, but there's some caveats there that I think are really, really important. So I think most security experts would tell you not to do that, that it's better to use a password manager, that password managers are more secure. You're also not locked into a single platform. If you save them to your browser, be it Safari on your Apple device or Chrome on your Android device, you're going to be eventually held captive by and they know that. That's how those things work. But you're then held captive by them because it makes it incredibly difficult to move to the competitors' platform. But it's also very convenient. So I personally have been saving my passwords to my browser and iCloud keychain for some time, but I'm also really good about securing all of my devices. I've got encryption turned on. I'd like to talk about that at some point, Karen, tonight. Yeah. I've got encryption turned on. I absolutely, even though I'm the only person that uses my computer, I've got a password on that computer, and it requires me to do that every time I log in. I've got to use my password, and I'm also very careful about I don't let anyone else use my computer, or if my children ever wanted to, I would set up a profile on my computer unique to them so they had their own login. Now, if you can't do those things, or if all of that just sounds too overwhelming, then I would say don't save them to your browser. Use a password manager instead, because they make all that a little bit easier. So it all comes down to how good you are about securing your mobile devices and your personal computers.
And how much you trust your kids not to go on Amazon and order,
sure. Yeah.
order their next birthday present without your knowledge, right?
That's right. That's right.
Some great questions coming in about VPNs. Maybe you can just tell us, first what a VPN is and, when it's best to deploy that.
Yeah, these are excellent questions. So, we talked about Wi-Fi. You talked about Wi-Fi, Karen. You gave some great advice about if you can avoid it, don't use it, and that means use your cellular connectivity. It's more secure. It's better. The thing with public Wi-Fi, as Karen mentioned, you don't know how secure it is, number one, and number two, a fraudster can actually set up a wireless network and broadcast it. They can broadcast that SSID and call it Starbucks 2 or Panera 2 or whatever. And they know that folks will see it, they'll see free Wi-Fi, and they'll hop onto it. And if you're on a fraudster's Wi-Fi network like that, as you mentioned, Karen, they can see everything you're doing. They can see every keystroke, they can see every website, everything you're doing, in that session. They have the ability to see it, to download it, store it, and that's how some of these compromises, happen. So we suggest you stay off of public Wi-Fi. However, there are going to be times where you have to, because you don't have cellular connectivity and you need it. So what do you do? And this is now where we get into the question about the VPN. So VPN stands for Virtual Private Network. What that is, it's an application that runs on your device. It could be on your personal computer. You can run them on your mobile devices as well. But the sole purpose of a VPN is to encrypt everything you're doing on that device with whatever other website you might be communicating with, over the internet, such that if you're on a public Wi-Fi and someone has the ability to see what you're doing, if you've enabled a VPN, then it's scrambled and they won't be able to see that. So it's a great security measure. You have to turn it on though. You have to remember to do that. So there's some good, hygiene and behaviors that you need to be considerate of there, because it's really easy to hop on into your financial institution and not turn on your VPN from your phone. But that's what those are for. And here too, you want to pay for this service. There are plenty of free ones out there. I would recommend against them. I bet you users are curious what we like for VPN wise, and one that I've been using for years, although I've used several different ones, but I had a lot of success with one called Hotspot Shield, and it was really good. And I think if you did a search for that, you'd probably bring up a few others, that are really good as well. A lot of antivirus programs have some different VPNs. I mentioned Dashlane as a password manager. Well, they offer a VPN, as part of their service. So increasingly, you'll see them as part of packages, that are available to you. But we think they're great to use. And where you really want to use it is when you're on a public Wi-Fi of any type.
Right. And would you say, you should use it even if you're on your home Wi-Fi as well?
So as a extra security measure,
belts and suspenders, right?
Yeah, as an extra security measure, you could, but this is where I like to add in like a dose of reality. And when we're at home, the greatest security risk, cyber-wise, as we think about Wi-Fi, is someone would have to be sitting at the end of our driveway, at the time we're on the computer, watching what we're doing, and that's the chances of that happening are really, really slim. And you most likely know your neighbors, and it's unlikely you've got a hacker hanging out in one of those homes, tracking everything that you're doing there. I've recommended that to those that have individuals working from home, just because I think it's a good idea to get into the habit of turning on a VPN wherever you are. But the risk of something happening when we're at home is extremely slim.
Yeah, I think we've talked about, more important when you're working from home, making sure that your software is maintained, that your security on your physical computers is being monitored. I use McAfee. What do you use?
For antivirus?
Yeah.
I've bounced around from a few different ones. I would tell you McAfee is a great one, widely adopted. I've used one called WebRoot before that I thought was really good. I've used one called Sophos before that was really good. I think the thing about antivirus is you want to get one that is it's commercial grade, that it's a well-respected name, in the space, but that you're just keeping updated with those virus definitions. That's what's most important, with that one. I think there's probably, easily a dozen great names out there. Oh, and on that note, if you are making decisions on technology providers, and antivirus is a good one, there's a website that I've been using probably for easily 20 years, called CNET. It's the letter C as in Charlie and then net. And they do great reviews of all things technology, hardware and software, and I found them super helpful for this sort of thing. So if you're looking for an unbiased review like that and some good rating systems, CNET has been super helpful. That would probably be a good one for navigating antivirus providers.
Yeah, and I know sometimes it's easy to forget, when we're in our office space, we have an IT department at times, looking over our shoulder and making sure all this is being updated systematically. And when we're at home, we need to really take it into our own hands and make sure that our home computers, I mean, ideally, we would have even a separate computer, right, that we're doing only our professional work on, but that's not the case for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult. This is good for the small business owners, that might be on the line. Ideally, if we have our people working from home, they're using company-owned equipment. That's the best because we know it's maintained. We've got updated operating systems and antivirus and protection measures enabled on there and other really important controls. But that's not reality, for many organizations. So that's where you want to make sure that if you are using a personal computer at home for business purposes, well, actually, even generally, keep the operating system updated. That's the most current version of that operating system. Then you want to keep all your security patches up to date. I actually just automatically accept all of those things. And then same thing with antivirus. You want to make sure it's up to date and then along with its antivirus definitions.
Yeah. All right, and maybe we'll get just a little bit scary for a second, Adam. If the worst happens and you are compromised, we've had a question about ransomware, and just more generally, what do you do then?
If you've been,
if you feel your information's been compromised.
Yeah, if you're a victim of ransomware, well, actually, if you think you've been compromised. I think one of the we provide a good list of protocols to individual investors that work with the firm, that I represent. But one of the things on that list is I would immediately contact the professionals that you work with and let them know, and not by way of email. So attorney, CPA, if you work with a financial advisor, let them know, and then I would be in touch with your financial institutions.
Yeah,
let them know.
We will
credit card, mortgage.
Yeah, we will keep a close watch on any client account that feels they've had a compromise.
I'd get in touch with them. I would be all over my credit. So there are a few different good options there.
Free ones, yeah.
Yeah, Credit Karma is a great one, and it's I use Credit Karma, and it's great for staying on top of what's happening. You can also contact each of the credit bureaus and put a lock or a freeze on those. That's another thing that I would do. That's going to keep anyone from opening up an account where a credit check needs to be run, on you. And then at this point, it would be too late, but often we get questions about, well, what about these identity theft protection companies? LifeLock is one, and there are now a number of others like them. I think those are great too. But where I find the most value in using those platforms isn't in the protection or insurance that they offer in the event of an incident, but rather staying on top of my credit. So I remember when I was using LifeLock, and the same is now true for the most part with Credit Karma. But anytime my credit is run, I'll get an immediate notification on my mobile device. And the beauty of that is, if your identity has been stolen, the sooner you act, the better. You want to mitigate that damage as quickly as possible and get after it. And having those immediate notifications, I think, is great. So those are probably a number of things that I think you could do with regard to what to do in the event your identity has been stolen.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, we've gotten a number of questions. We will follow up with an email after this presentation, and we'll include all of the recommendations for the various technologies. So if you're furiously writing notes, don't worry, we've got you covered. We should talk just a little bit about some financial, compromises that can occur. And, I'm seeing people asking questions about credit cards, how secure they are these days, and saving them particularly to your Google Wallet and things of that nature. Would you recommend, doing those kinds of things, presuming that the device that they're saved on, is encrypted and is password protected?
And that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so long as that device is protected, you use your thumb or your face or a PIN number to get in, I have no concern saving it. These are some of the most secure devices in our spheres right now, are mobile devices. So no issues there, at all. I've known some that are much more careful with their debit cards than they are their credit cards. So here's the distinction. If you do have a concern around that, well, maybe you don't save your debit card to your Google Wallet or your Apple Wallet, but your credit cards are in there fine. You've got great protections when using a credit card that I think you kind of have with a debit card, but it's more difficult. And there's something about having cash removed from my account that is so much more scary than a charge on my credit card that I could just immediately dispute. If cash gets moved out of my checking account, I got to go chase that down. If I got a fraudulent charge on my credit card, I just need to make a phone call and the problem is solved. So I would say, with that in mind, don't ever use your debit card anywhere you don't have to. So I would never use it online if I don't have to. There are some places like Costco where I have to use it at the point of sale, an ATM, of course. But other than that, I don't use my debit card anywhere.
Gas
But I'll use
stations.
the credit card online.
I've heard horror stories
Sure.
about gas stations.
Yeah, it's scary.
Another place I wouldn't use a debit card. Yeah. Also on the financial platform, we want to make sure that everybody is aware, that wire fraud is a big topic these days. And, if you are buying a new home or, doing some kind of, building construction project and you need to send a wire to a contractor or to an escrow company, you want to not rely on email instructions. You want to pick up the phone, you want to call directly and verify those instructions yourself. Adam, have you run into some of that also?
I have. I don't disagree with any of that at all. I think that's excellent guidance.
Yeah. For our clients, we are obsessive about not relying on, email instructions to transfer money even, and really the best way you can secure that is request it online. Don't send an email, or pick up the phone and call. If we receive an email like that, we will pick up the phone and we will call you. So we have gotten a tremendous number of great questions here. I think maybe we'll do one or two more, and I do promise if we didn't get to your question, we will follow up via email. Adam, let's take this one. Any wired phone spam blockers? Because I've gotten a couple of these, and I know these are particular annoyance. And getting these spam calls on your home phones, especially political, anything you can recommend for that?
Well, I would get rid of the landline. It's what I would do. Personally, I haven't had a wired phone
not a bad
as
idea.
long as I can remember. It's I wish I had some experience here, but I only have a mobile phone. Now I will tell you, I get spam now on my mobile phone, all the time. And there are blockers on the mobile phone, and there's apps and other ways to block those things from unknown callers on your mobile device. That's not the question, though.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I might be a little stumped on this one. I do know that there are. There are
I think getting rid of the phone is a terrific idea, unless
we'll stop there.
Unless you need it. But there's very little you can't use, for your cell phone. I know for myself, I was reluctant to get rid of the home line because of the home alarm system, and even those can run through, the cell phone these days. So
for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, as they say, there's no such thing as a free lunch, and there's no such thing as a free webinar. So I just want to take 1 minute here to tell you a little bit more about the firm that I work for, Rappaport Rikus Capital Management. I've been with them 13 years, and I would like to just, share with you a couple couple of things about that. We are, as I mentioned, an independent investment advisory firm working with individuals, families, and nonprofits. We do investment management and financial planning for our clients, and our goal is to maximize your return on life. And so we know it's important to get the highest return you can on your investments, but for us, we want to reach further, and we want our clients to be able to spend their time and spend their energy on pursuits that are fulfilling to them. And so they know that their financial situation is being monitored closely, and we are that trusted partner they can come to on a whole range of financial planning issues. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. As I mentioned, we will follow up with an email. We will give you all of our recommendations. If we did not get to your question, we will answer that as well. If you'd like to learn more about Rappaport-Ricus, or if you think of a question after we've already signed off, please feel free to email us at info@rrcapital.com. My biggest thanks out to Adam, the cybersecurity guru, for generously sharing his time with us. And we wish you all in this time of uncertainty to stay healthy and to stay safe. And thank you so much for joining us tonight.